Welcome, everyone. It's a good day to discuss performance indicators. Of course, I always think it's a good day to discuss performance indicators. My name is Laura Aaron, and I'm from Social Policy Research Associates, or SPR. And SPR has been supporting the Division of Indian and Native American Programs and its grantees for over 30 years. And I'm so happy to be with you virtually today. In the room at the Hard Rock is Chelsea Fish, a DINAP Federal Project Officer, and will be partnering for this workshop. Thank you, Chelsea. So we have some online participants participating from all over. I see in the chat, I know that Christian is with us from Alaska, and Pauline is logging in from Wyoming. We might have other folks, and then we have folks in the room. So welcome, everyone. Oops, let's see here. So sorry about that. Looks like it was stuck. Okay, so today we're going to learn about the performance indicators under WIOA, plus the 2 Indian program-specific measures that are part of the law. And we're also going to begin to understand how to enhance performance for your program. We will only focus on the Comprehensive Services Program, or the adult program, as some people call it, today, and not the youth program. So I'd love to actually just find out what levels of knowledge we have in the room. So let's do a couple of polls. For those of you online, you'll see the poll just pop up like it did on the screen, and you'll be able to put your answer right in online. But for those of you in person, I'd like you to raise your hand, and Chelsea will approximate the responses for me. So here's the first poll. The question is, have you ever attended a performance training before? Whether it was at a conference with me or one of my colleagues here at SPR. So again, for those of you online, I see people participating, and those in the room, if you've attended a performance training before, raise your hand if you would say yes. And Chelsea, just look it over for a minute. Okay, put your hands down. If your answer is no, put your hands up. Okay, put your hands down. And then if you do not remember, it's a maybe, put your hands up. We got a couple maybes online also. And Chelsea, how's the read of the room?
It's split. I would say we have just about half who have not and half who have.
Okay, wonderful. And online I see that actually 75% have never been to a workshop before, and 17% say, yep, they've been here before. Wonderful. And we're going to go on to the next poll. So basically, I would like you just to rate how much you know about performance indicators. So you'll rate your knowledge of performance indicators. The responses are rock star, solid, getting there, and beginner. And so I see answers already coming online. So in the room, how would you rate your knowledge of performance indicators? Okay, if you're a rock star, put your hands up. Maybe you can help me with the performance workshop today. Any rock stars there, Chelsea?
I don't think they're giving themselves enough credit. We didn't have any hands raised for rock stars.
Uh-oh. Okay, how about
rock stars in the room?
How about people that are feeling pretty solid in their knowledge? Any hands?
2 hands.
Yes. Awesome. You know who I want to know who you are too by the end of this workshop. And you can help other people today. So that's why I wanted to see who's in the room. Maybe you can help us out. And then what about people, you're getting there.
We have lots who are getting there.
Nice. How many beginners do we have?
We have a handful of beginners, just about 5.
Okay, I really appreciate you guys taking that poll. We're going to close the polls now. And so that just really helped me out to know that most of the people coming today, you're getting there or you're beginners. And so I'm going to keep that in mind as I share the information with you. And I also especially want you to ask questions during this workshop, whether again, you're online or in person. Again, just want to make sure we get this done. So are there any, you had a lot of workshops to choose to come to. Thank you for coming to this one. And I know you want to increase your knowledge, but I was wondering if there are any specific questions that you have that you wanted to learn about today. Maybe something is a burning question for you. If you're online, put those burning questions in the chat. And if you're in the room, if you could just walk up to the computer and then I'll be able to hear you. So I'm going to give that a little minute for you guys to think about that. Do you have particular questions today? Any people walking up to the computer? Nope. Chelsea, anyone there?
We're making our way up now.
Yeah. Dance your way up.
Hi, Laura. It's Christina. I'm with the workforce at LA with UAII. My only question is, what makes it a successful outcome for a participant? Is it like after they got employed, or is it like within the year or the 3 months? I'm just curious about that one.
That is an awesome question. And so again, it's Christina, right? Or Christine?
Yes, Christina, it's fine.
Yeah. So you want to know, when are you going to find out? Like what's the timing of the measure, right?
Yes.
And we're definitely going to go through that today.
Thanks.
And we want to get familiar with these measures. And at the same time, just so you know, you don't have to memorize these things. Okay. Like you really want to understand it very well, because really your program design is kind of around these measures, because, we're concerned with employment, right? And people keeping their employment. We're concerned with people having living wages. Well, all of those types of things, why we have all our programs, they're all built into these kinds of performance outcomes. And so we want to know, well, as Christina said, when is it actually measured? The thing is, though, is that your GPMS, the online case management system, has a lot of different kinds of alerts and things like that, that will help you out, right? So you set these alerts and they'll pop up and they'll remind you. Are there any other questions that we want to make sure to get through today?
Any other burning questions? And we have none.
Okay, here we go. So today we're going to hit the high points. We're also going to practice some. And because we're only together for now less than 90 minutes, I would like to direct you to the community of practice after, once you go home or once you stop this workshop. This workshop is over today, because there's a recorded version of this workshop from a couple of years ago, and it has a lot more detail because we had several hours for that workshop. So don't worry, you're gonna really, I think, understand all the basics today. But for example, there's one performance indicator that's very, very detailed, and we'll save that for you to look at online in a little more detail. So before we get to the actual performance indicators, let's start with key definitions. There are 5 key definitions to understand as a foundation before we get to these specific measures. We're going to talk about what is a participant, the date of participation, service, exit, and exit quarter. And so let's start with participant. There are 2 criteria that make a customer a formal participant in your program. First, they have to be eligible for your program. And second, they have to receive a WIOA service. And both criteria must be met for a person to be accounted as a participant. In GPMS, when they are found eligible and they receive a WIOA service, they're made active. They're an active participant. So does anyone know, why would we want to know if someone's formally a participant or not in our program? Just a question to you guys. Why do we care? Any ideas? Again, those of you online, love for you to chat in all through this workshop if you'd like. And those of you in the room, just keep dancing up to the computer, or you can raise your hand and Chelsea can let me know what you say. So I see in the chat that Tiana says, well, they'll stay pending if we don't give them a service. And Jay Warren says, maybe, I'm not sure what that says, Jay Warren, but something or other about follow-up or something like that. So we don't know their status, right? And was there a question, was there an answer in the room also?
Can you come up to the podium? We do have one.
So one of the reasons could be because if they have history with the WIOA program before, we would want to know if we've helped them with any particular services, like supportive services in the past. Just so we know if we're repeating a pattern with someone's work history or the same kind of work, just to know what they've gone through before, looking at their history as well.
I really appreciate you coming up to the mic. What's your name?
Jessica.
Thank you, Jessica.
Sure.
So there's a lot of answers out there, and I'm going to give you another one. Only formal participants are counted in your performance. So let's say you host an open house or you have an orientation session, and you sit down after the orientation session and you determine that an individual is eligible for your program, right? But then you never see them again. This happens. I'm just imagining the nodding going on out there, right? Well, this is like a check, because that's good, because then you're not held accountable for their performance. You're not held accountable, even though they came to your orientation session, as to whether they got a job or not. So we have to, so people are formal participants in your program when they are eligible and they've also received a service. Does that make sense to folks? Do I see some nodding in the room?
We do have some nodding in the room.
Nice.
Is there that doesn't quite still fully align with?
Say that again. Who talked? Who was speaking?
That was me, Laura, and I was just asking the room if there were anybody who's still in the gray area about that. But it looks like everybody has a pretty good understanding of it.
Okay, wonderful. So next, now that we know what a participant is, it follows that the date of participation is the first day that an individual begins receiving a service funded by your program. Okay, so it's the start of program participation, and it's an actual date. And this is key to understanding basically the timing of performance calculations for some of them, and also just knowing it when they're still active. And as I said, the GPMS case management system automatically makes someone active, in other words, a formal participant, as soon as they are determined eligible and assigned one of these qualifying services. And, you know, I keep saying service, so you guessed it, the next definition is service or qualifying service. And so we know individuals must be determined eligible and receive a service to be a participant. So what's a service? What counts as a qualifying service? And basically, it's any in-program activities. Those that are considered a service. And more specifically, it's really any activity that involves significant staff involvement. So here are some examples of qualifying services: initial assessments, comprehensive assessments, the development of an employability plan, job placement assistance, work experience, group counseling, on-the-job training, classroom training, any kind of training. Those are all qualifying services. And so again, pretty much any service that they would receive in your program while they're an active participant is a service. So what is not a service? So note that these things are not services. So determination of eligibility, just by you finding out if they're eligible for your program, that's not a service. And again, that's important, right? Because we do not want to be held accountable for people's performance unless they're really in our program, you know, that we're actually serving them. So other things that do not count as services are if someone comes to, let's say, your computer room, they're not in your program, but they just do some self-directed job search and it doesn't result in a referral to a job, that's not considered a service. Follow-up services, even though services in the name, are not a in-program service. Follow-up services. We'll talk about that in a minute, but these are not services. Also, just regular contact with your customer to just obtain information, like to find out if they're employed or what's their educational status, or hey, do you need support services, that kind of thing. That is not a service. And self-service activities, informational activities, like they just come in and find out some labor market information, meaning what are the jobs that are hottest, you know, in your region. None of those are considered service. And and we have a couple questions in the chat, which I'll get to in a minute, but I want to say a little bit more about follow-up services, okay? They're incredibly important and you should budget for them. In case you are a program manager, you want to be able to budget for follow-up services, and you'll find out why soon. But they're not in-program qualifying services, right? Because they occur after someone has exited your program. So follow-up services can pretty much be any service that helps a customer keep their job or get a job if they lost that job that they had when they left your program. And it can also be something that helps them advance in their career. And follow-up services must be made available to customers for up to 12 months after their first day of employment. Again, these are adults in the comprehensive services program. So Tiana asked, do the pending clients, and what she's talking about, meaning people that are not participants, count toward anything? And she says at one point, I think they were self-serve. A self-serve customer is different than a pending customer. So a self-serve customer is just someone that comes in and they're in your computer lab and they're just working on their own. You're not helping them at all, kind of thing. There's no significant staff involvement, but they're counted just as that the person came in. So Tiana, you're right. They're a self-serve kind of customer, but they're not a participant in your program. And Deanna asks, what's the difference between comprehensive and initial assessments? So we're not going to really be going into kind of program services so much deep dive today, but initial assessments might be not deep dive is what I'm trying to say. They're just initial assessments, what are you interested in? Why are you here? What kinds of things, what are your goals? What do you want from the program? And a comprehensive assessment might be something that they take online or on paper to help them. It might tell you something about their skill set, traditional skill set. It might tell you about their interests. So again, self-service activities don't count as in-program activities. We clear on that? So we now know that a participant is someone that has been found eligible and received an in-program service. And now we know what's not a service, just making them eligible, determining whether they're eligible, or like follow-up services. And the reason why follow-up services are not an in-program service is they occur after someone has exited from your program. And they're not counted as in-program services because you want someone to eventually exit from your program, right? And be able to see whether we got positive performance. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next key definition, which is date of exit. So the date of exit is the last day on which the individual received an in-program service funded by your program or a partner program. And this day will be important, again, for calculating several of the performance measures. Next, so that was date of exit. And just so you know, the GPMS system will automatically exit a participant who has not received an in-program WIOA qualifying service within 90 days and is not scheduled for future services. So this is why it's so important that when you put services into GPMS, you put the beginning date and the end date, right? And if they have finished some kind of service, but they're not done in your program, you always want to make sure that they have some kind of active service. Otherwise, GPMS will automatically exit them at some point. The thing that's great though is GPMS waits 90 days. And this is really important because sometimes someone might end up, you thought that they were stable, but they might end up needing more help. And let's say it's only been 2 weeks, not even 90 days. Go ahead and give them put in another qualifying service so they can remain active. But again, you don't want to keep people active forever. So we're on to the next key definition, which is quarters. So another critical concept in the world of WIOA performance is quarters. And the concept though is simple. It's just a calendar year that is broken into 4 quarters. So each quarter is made up of a 3-month period. You have January, February, March, April, May, June, July through September, and October through December. So why are quarters important? So they're important because many measures are they're calculated based on the quarter in which participants exit your program. And for example, many of the performance indicator definitions, you'll see they contain phrases such as exit quarter or second quarter after exit or fourth quarter after exit. So we have to know when someone exited to then know when is the second quarter after their exit. And as you saw with, I'm going to go back actually to this, to the quarters, you can see that if someone exited in July, their exit quarter is July, August, September. That's when they exited, right? So their first quarter after exit is that October, November, December. Any questions on quarters?
Any questions on the quarters? No questions on the corners from the audience.
Great. For some reason, this keeps getting stuck. Okay, there we go. So we also use calendar quarters because many performance indicators are measured using unemployment insurance wage records. And so, you might say, why? Doesn't that seem odd? Unemployment insurance records, why are we looking at UI records to, for example, look at wages or employment? Well, all of us here, virtually or in person, we all have a job, right? And our employers pay in to unemployment insurance. That's what you see on your stub, your pay stub every 2 weeks or something. And so I show up in UI wage records, you show up in UI wage records because we have a job. And it's the same thing for your participants. And if they show up in UI wage records, they have a job. So while you report in GPMS that they have a job and you're actually manually putting that in GPMS, we have a fallback system. And we also look at the UI wage records. Your program's not in charge of that, but Dynap's in charge of that. And that's a fallback in case, boy, you can't get a hold of someone, and it's now 4 quarters after they've left your program. You really want to try to get a hold of them. But if you can't and they have a job, they're going to show up in UI wage records and then you get a positive. So these UI wage records, though, they're reported quarterly. And they include earnings for each quarter of a person. And they usually can't actually, though, identify the date of employment or hours or hourly wages. They just show, here's the earnings for the quarter. So I'm going to put a question out to the crowd. Do you know how many hours a person has to work in a quarter to show up in UI wage records? Let's get some guesses from people online and in the room. How many hours do you think you have to show up in order to show up in those, work in order to show up in UI wage records? Any guesses? Doesn't hurt to guess.
We have a guess, Laura.
Hi,
All right, I've got 10 online. Who's guessing in person?
my name is Krista Snow, and it's 1 hour of employment.
It is. Thank you, Kristen. Give her, let's say, woo, raise the roof. All right. You would think, right, that it would be, boy, they've had to have a significant number of hours, and it's just 1 hour. And the reason why is because, again, the UI wage records, it's not that smart. It doesn't know how many hours that you've worked. It just shows that you have worked. So let's do some examples. And I say that just because, of course, we don't want someone to just work 1 hour, but they will show up in the wage records, and that often can get you a positive. So again, we don't want that really, but it's good to know. So let's do some examples. So let's see what quarters look like for a participant. Okay. So if Rose exits on May 14th, her exit quarter is April, May, June of that calendar year. So what months encompass her second quarter after exit? So I want you to just think about that for a minute. You see that Rose exited May 14th. So what months encompass her second quarter after exit? So those of you online, go ahead and participate. And those in the room, you can turn to your neighbor and maybe talk it over. But I'd like someone to come up to the mic and just give me a guess. Maybe two people come up to the mic. Maybe people have different ideas. But again, what months encompass her second quarter after exit? I've got all kinds of answers online. Can someone, and they're pretty consistent. So I'm just going to tell you what the online folks people say. October through December. And you're right. October through December is Rose's second quarter after exit. So how about Rose's fourth quarter after exit? What months are Rose's fourth quarter after exit? And let's get someone from the room this time to come on up to the mic. But study it a bit there. What would be her fourth quarter after exit?
Come on up. We have a volunteer who has a good guess.
What's going on, Laura? Oh, what? It's me, Sean. Yeah, it's gonna bring us right back here to April, May, June.
Is that Sean?
Sean, yeah.
Watch out, everyone. We got a lot of troublemakers in the room. You're exactly right, Sean. And for those of you online, thank you, Sean. And
Thanks,
thank
Laura.
yeah, and thanks for those of you also who participated online. So I want you to see that even if Rose exited in June, right? Or she exited in April, May, or June, your answers are going to be the same, okay? Her second quarter after exit still October through December, no matter whether she exited in May or June. And here's her third quarter after exit, and here's her fourth quarter after exit. All right, everyone, you guys got to give yourself some pats on the back. You are totally getting this. We're going to go to one more key definition, and then we're diving into the performance indicators. So this is called exclusionary exits. And there are 5 reasons participants can be excluded from all of the performance indicators, meaning someone's an active participant, but there are certain reasons why they would be excluded from your measures, meaning you're not held accountable for how they've done. And if you have a customer who has any of these 5 things occur, they'll be excluded from the performance indicators. Here are the reasons. If an individual becomes incarcerated, if they're receiving medical treatment expected to last more than 90 days, or if they're a reservist who is called to active duty for more than 90 days, if they're a youth in foster care and move outside of the local area, or if the individual dies. Okay, guys, we're ready. We're going in, gonna try these measures now. So believe it or not, there are 8 performance indicators for the Comprehensive Services Program or the adult program. And as I said, we're gonna go a little deep into several of these today. And I wanna show you though, where they are in the GPMS. So you can always check on a participant's performance outcomes in GPMS. You just click on the Outcomes tab, and this is probably difficult for you guys to see there in Tulsa, but this customer, Chris Connor, is employed in the second quarter after exit, employed in the fourth quarter after exit. Let's see, are these working? Yes. Attained a credential this one is going to be hard for you guys to see, but had almost $7,200 in earnings in her second quarter after exit, was employed by the same employer in the second and fourth quarters after exit. But I'm going to pause here because even though that's a great outcome, just so you know, there's not a lot of pressure for that. We just want someone employed in the second and fourth quarters after exit. It shows that they did not receive measurable skill gains. They received training, which is important, and they also attained employability skills. And there's a quick cheat sheet in GPMS. There's these little tiny words, again, you won't be able to see, that just say performance outcomes definitions. It's in the bottom left-hand corner of your GPMS screen, for those of you taking notes, bottom left-hand corner. And if you just click on it, it's a little cheat sheet for all the definitions that we're going to go through today. Okay, so let's go to our first performance indicator. And I think I'm going to go to Christian in Alaska. If you can just unmute for a minute, and if you'll read this definition out loud for everyone.
I hear a lot of sirens there.
That's me. I live in the city. I'm going to mute.
The percent of exiters who are employed anytime in the second quarter after the exit quarter.
Thank you so much, Christian.
You're welcome.
So, yeah, so this is the second quarter employment rate. And the key things I want you to remember are employment, second quarter after exit. Okay, so a person has to be employed, but what's the timing? Second quarter after exit. So those are the main things. If everyone has, taking notes, that's the thing I want you to come away with. Again, they're employed in the second quarter after exit. And just so you know, all of your participants, once they exit, they're going to be included in this measure, all of them. And what counts is unsubsidized employment. So this is not where it's like your program is paying some money, to an employer to employ them, right? This is unsubsidized employment. Anytime in that second quarter, it counts. And as we said before, the information you put into GPMS will help us know whether the person's employed in that second quarter after exit, but also evidence from that UI wage and federal employment matching systems will let us know. So let's do an example of the timing of the measure. What if Carl gets a job at the beginning of February and he's stable in his job and he exits from the program at the end of February? Does he get a positive for this measure? Oh, wait. Sorry. Let me take two. What if Carl gets a job at the beginning of February? He's stable. He exits from the program at the end of February, and then he loses his job in June. And he does not get another job until October. I want you to look at that for a minute. And we're in the second quarter employment rate. And I want you to think about whether he gets a positive for this measure. He had a job in February, he lost the job in June, and he got another job in October though. So will he get a positive for this measure? For those of you online, I'd like you to put in your guesses, but again, please just look at this. And for those of you in the room, take a minute, see what you think. Okay, so I see the answers coming in online. And what I'd like to do for those of you in the room, I'm just going to ask, does he get a positive for this measure? And nod your head, yes or no. Chelsea, what do they say?
Let's get a show of hands for yes. Let's get a show Show of hands for no. We have a majority of no's.
That majority, let's go with them. You're correct. Unfortunately, this is the second quarter after exit, and that's July, August, and September. And so he's employed in that January through March, like his exit quarter, right? The quarter in which he exits. And he's also employed in the first quarter after exit, April, May, June, but those quarters don't count for this measure. So what I'd like to know is, what could you have done as a case manager to prevent this from happening? Again, I'd like some answers in the chat. And if people would like to come up to the computer, what could you have done? He was a negative for this measure, but as a case manager, you could have prevented this. What kinds of, maybe, there's all these good ideas. There's nothing is foolproof, but what could you have done?
If you have some input that you'd like to share, come on up to the podium. That's going to be the theme for the day. I'm up here if you want to talk. Okay, we have a couple of ladies coming up, Laura.
Good. You guys look good today. Come on up. I can't see you, but.
Ideally, following up within the first quarter with their employment to make sure they're doing okay, see if they need any help or anything like that to continue to be successful.
I love that answer, is making sure that you're following up in that first quarter after exit. It's a perfect answer. And for the other person that came up, let's hear your ideas.
It's basically the same thing. Hi, I was basically going the same way because we do follow-ups every time someone exits, and especially after second quarter and fourth quarter. So if we found out that he was unemployed in the second quarter, we would ask if there was anything that we could assist him with and get some training or work experience or on-the-job training.
Okay, wonderful. And so, perfect, wonderful answers. And so again, remember, everyone's exited. And if it is in that first quarter after exit and it's within that 90-day window, you could offer the person another qualifying service and they might not have even exited, right? The person exited in February. So 90 days after is sometime in May, right? So if you are really keeping in touch with this person, then you, at this point, they still have a job, right? But how do people keep in touch with their customers? Can I get a couple of answers for that? Maybe online. Someone can type in an answer. How do you, phone calls, emails? Terrific. Does anyone use social media?
Snapchat? No, I'm just kidding.
Does anyone use phone calls? Go talk.
We had someone jokingly suggest Snapchat.
I heard that. For all those that disappear. So another person also said, well, you could keep in touch with the person's manager. That's a great idea too. I actually really want to strongly suggest that people keep in touch with their participants or exiters now by social media. And this doesn't mean it's your personal social media account. It means that your WIOA program should have a social media account, whether it's Facebook is an easy one. I'm not a big fan of Facebook, but Facebook is really easy, right? And really finding out, well, what social media do most of your customers use? And you want to keep in touch with folks. And it's much easier to kind of keep in touch with them by social media so that they know you're kind of always there for them. You saw that here, Carl lost the job in June, and you might have reached out to him in May, but he lost the job in June, but maybe you've been keeping, kind of keeping a good relationship with that person, and they then might reach out to you. So anyway, just want to put in just a bid for people to kind of use social media. Let's do another example for the second quarter employment rate. So we're going to show that Kara exits in April and she gets a job in June and she keeps it until the second week of October. Will she get a positive for the second quarter employment rate? Take a minute, look at the calendar and see what you think. So again, she exits in April, gets a job in June, and keeps it until the second week of October.
Yes. So we've got a yes response here in the room.
And can you tell me why she gets a positive? The person that said yes?
She made at least $1.
Because she made at least $1
For an hour of work.
or an hour of working in that quarter.
Right, because she didn't lose it until the second week of October. And again, that's not ideal, right? But now we want to think about this. We found out she lost her job in the second week of October. Here's a question. In order to help her out, do you have to re-enroll her in your program?
No is an answer we have here in the room.
Okay, have them come on up.
Okay, she's on her way.
So why do you say no? And tell me your name.
Can you,
Remember, I can't see you, so.
okay, they know that. Can you repeat the question, please, Laura?
So we found out that she's a positive. Great, right? Because she was employed at least in October, but she did lose her job and we want to be able to help her out with some services. And I said, do you need to re-enroll her? And the wise person in front of you, whose name is
Krista Snow.
Krista Snow.
Oh, Krista again, is.
I know, I gotta be quiet.
I said, do you need to re-enroll her? And Krista, the wise one, said no. Krista, can you tell them why it's no?
There are like supporter services and stuff that you can provide the client without actually having to re-enroll them. Like if they're looking for, they found their own job, or if you got like partners you work with, and they're able to help them, you don't always necessarily have to enroll them unless you have to exactly put money out for them yourself.
So I think that's a great answer. And I'm going to add to you, I'm going to say yes. And remember that we have to provide follow-up services to all adult participants 12 months from the day after they get that job. And we see that they got the job in June. So we still are in the follow-up phase. And remember I said that you can give follow-up services. Follow-up services are almost any service basically that you gave them in program. You can help them get a job again. You can help them keep their job, advance in their job with follow-up services. And, you know, it depends upon the person, but probably here, you have to, of course, assess why the person lost their job. So it's always an individual answer, right? But you can just give that person follow-up services. And as Krista said, some of those follow-up services might be from a partner program. It might not be money that you have to spend. Very smart, said by probably a program manager, Krista. Because you always want to leverage other people's programs too. But I just want you to know that one, you want to make sure that you're making a decision on this individual, on Kara, as to what kinds of help and support you might be able to give her. But two, we're in the follow-up phase. It's been 90 days, so you can't actually just give her another qualifying service and magically she's a client again. You know, as far as deciding, like, let's say it's 11 months after that she first got the job, you might have to decide whether she needs to be re-enrolled or not. And that is a program's decision. There is no like law or reg that tells you how many times you can re-enroll a person in your program. But again, key here, the person's employed in the second quarter after employment, but we have to, as program managers, we have to make sure that we are budgeting money for follow-up. That 2, we know about all of our partners that might be able to provide services to Kara or any of our program participants. And 3, we've got to keep in touch with people. So thank you so much. Terrific. We are on to our second performance indicator. This one's going to be so easy. It's called the fourth quarter employment rate. So here are the 2 things you need to know. And actually, Chelsea, if you can just read the definition out loud to everyone.
The percent of exiters who were employed anytime in the fourth quarter after the exit quarter.
Thank you. So the 2 things you want to remember, employment and fourth quarter after exit. Okay, so we want them employed in the fourth quarter after exit. This is not actually a retention rate. So they don't have to be in the same job that they were in the second quarter after exit. Okay. It's only going to measure what happens in that fourth quarter after exit. And again, it's looking at unsubsidized employment anytime in that fourth quarter. It's the same thing as second quarter employment rate in that you need to put the information in to GPMS, but we also will look at UI wages. Let's do an example. What if Shauna gets a job in June and exits from the adult program? Then she loses the job in August and does not get another job until January. Does Shauna get a positive for the fourth quarter employment rate? Take a moment. Really think about this one. Study it. Confer with your neighbor if you'd like. Okay, I see some answers coming in online, and I want you to take a moment, and anyone that has an answer, come on up to the computer. Anyone want to take a guess? We're all friends here.
Is there anyone who'd like to come up? Come on up. We have someone coming up, or
Okay, you get extra credit because you came up. Tell me your name.
Do I have to tell you my name, Laura? We've met.
Uh-oh. Who is it?
It's Carrie.
Uh-oh, he could be doing this. You could be doing this
Okay.
workshop, Carrie.
Making the assumption that the job she got in January, she has in April, then it will be yes. It does count as fourth quarter employment.
Do you know what I want to pick out as to what Carrie said? Because Carrie is very bright. He said, we'd have to make an assumption that maybe if she was employed in that April, May, or June, because that's the fourth quarter after exit. So really, we don't know. So this was a trick one. This was a trick question. But I like, Carrie, the way that you answered it, because you said, well, if she's employed in April, then she'd be a positive.
Yeah, I was discussing this and I would have given a not yet.
Exactly, because we don't know, right? It's unknown. And I want to point out to everyone again that you have alerts in GPMS. And so you will not, you'll be able to look in the GPMS system and see, are we coming up on the fourth quarter after exit? Do I need to reach out to my customer? So any questions? And Carrie really is an expert. So look to him for the rest of the workshop. Yes, Carrie. Okay, so that's the second quarter employment rate and the fourth quarter employment rate. I think it's very straightforward. It's just that I didn't mean to trick you, but wanted you to see that we don't know, right? What happened during the fourth quarter yet. Okay, we're going to go on to the third performance indicator. It's called median earnings. And I am going to look to someone online, Ruben Carrillo. If you can unmute just for a minute and read this definition.
The median quarterly earnings of those employed in the second quarter after the exit quarter.
Thanks, Ruben. Okay, you can mute. So what do we want to take from that? We want to take earnings and second quarter after exit. So what needs to happen? Someone needs to have earnings. And when does it have to happen? In the second quarter after exit. So if you're taking notes, those are the two things to remember: earnings, second quarter after exit. Note that it's anytime in that second quarter, anytime. And the evidence comes from UI wage records, but it also comes from you putting it right there in the GPMS system. So we do want you to keep track of your customers so you can put in their wages. Let's do an example. What if Dante starts participating in the adult program in July, the comprehensive services program in July, and exits from the program in September? What quarter do we need to look at for his earnings? And what months are in that quarter? So what quarter is important for this? For those of you that wrote it down, what quarter after exit are we looking at? And what months is that quarter? So first, what quarter is important for this? I see second quarter coming in online, and you are correct. So again, for median earnings, we're saying, does the person have any earnings in the second quarter after exit? And what months are this person, Dante's, second quarter after exit? January, February, and March. So if you got that correct, again, give yourselves a round of applause, a pat on the back. You're getting this very quickly now. So again, we would look at January to March of the year after he exits. So I also want to point out that it's called median earnings. And I'm just going to spend a moment on this because remember in school when we learned the difference between median and mean and mode? Okay, I know it's a bit fuzzy, right? Because I always forget. So the median is basically just the middle point. So we line up, let's say we had 7 participants, like I have in this example. We line up the participants from the lowest quarterly earnings to the highest quarterly earnings. And it's just the point in the middle. So you see that person 4 in this configuration is the person in the middle. So that's 3,000. So that would be the median quarterly earnings for your entire program. Okay? Because median quarterly earnings is looking at your entire program. So the reason why we do median is because it protects from highs and lows. For example, let's say you had person 1, 2, and 3, and they got only $100, or they got $0 in that second quarter after exit. 0. Okay. And then numbers 5, number of people's 4, 5, 6, and 7 are exactly the same, the median quarterly earnings for your program would still be 3,000, even if persons 1, 2, and 3 were 0. So it's not taking an average. So it kind of protects against those highs and lows. Okay. Any questions on median quarterly earnings or when it's measured?
Do you have any questions about the median?
We don't have any questions here in the audience.
Thank you, Chelsea. And, basically, again, so far, here's where we are. The second quarter employment rate. What's important? Employment in the second quarter. The fourth quarter employment rate. What's important? Employment in the fourth quarter after exit. The median earnings. What's important is that a person has earnings in the second quarter after employment. So that should be your little cheat sheet for right now. We're on to the credential rate. My favorite. This one has a really long definition. And I am going to turn to, I think, is it Christina Snow? Can you come on up and read that really long definition for us? I'm going to have a little snack. It takes this long for this one to be read.
Thank you for volunteering me for that. Percentage of exiters who have obtained a post-secondary credential or high school diploma or equivalent within 1 year after exit. Those obtaining a high school diploma or equivalent count as a success only if they are employed or in education or training leading to a recognized post-secondary credential within the year.
Woo! Okay, everyone's got that one down pat, right? Boy, they didn't make it easy with that definition, but let's break it down. And again, think about what needs to happen and when it needs to happen. So for your cheat sheet, I'd like you to put down credential. Someone needs to get a credential. Your participant needs to get a credential. And when? The timing was during the program or up to 1 year after exit. So on your cheat sheet, put credential. And when does it need to happen? During the program or up to 1 year after exit. So, what is a credential? Basically, there is an official definition. So it needs to be, a credential is awarded in recognition of measurable technical or occupational skills. They have to be based on standards developed or endorsed by employers. And just for you to know, I know that sometimes people say credential and sometimes people say certificate. And just so you know, it's all the same thing. And here are some examples of post-secondary credentials. So again, post-secondary credentials. We have 4 different buckets here. We've got an educational degree bucket, and some examples of that for post-secondary are associate degrees and bachelor's degrees. Then we have industry recognized certifications, and some examples are Microsoft Office Specialist or Cisco Certified Network Associate. These often have some company's name in the front of it. The next bucket is registered apprenticeships. And that can occur in many different fields. It could be from cybersecurity to bus operator to carpenter's helper. You know that apprenticeships happen in so many different fields. And the last bucket for post-secondary credential examples is occupational licenses. And some examples there are phlebotomy and gaming licenses. Now, of course, there are other credential examples. We were doing post-secondary. There are secondary examples. For example, we know that Indian programs grantees do an amazing job at helping participants earn high school diplomas, GEDs as adults. And this is terrific. And they count as credentials. But remember, in that really long definition that Christina read at the beginning, well, we remember though, for these secondary credentials like GEDs, high school diplomas, that you have to get something else. It's because often a GED or high school diploma, it's not enough to improve participants' program and personal outcomes. And so participants must also obtain employment or be in education or training leading to a post-secondary credential within that year. So let's talk about what aren't certificates or credentials. So if you meaning your grantee program has made up a certificate, or let's say your local state workforce board made up a certificate, those aren't considered credentials or certificates, nor are work readiness or career readiness certificates, because that does not document measurable technical or occupational skills necessary to gain employment or advance within an occupation. And that's for like those work readiness certificates. And if your program may have made up a certificate, well, that's great, but it might not be really recognized by an employer, because they're like, well, you made that up. It's not something that's kind of transferable, and that if someone left your state or your region would make any sense. So of course, work readiness skills are important for your customers, but under this measure, they just don't count as a credential. So I'm going to go back through that definition again and kind of break it down, because there's multiple ways that your participants can earn a positive outcome. And we're going to go through those 4 ways. So they can earn a post-secondary credential, meaning anything like we talked about, associate's degree or a gaming license or a phlebotomy license, an HVAC certificate, any kind of post-secondary credential. It can happen during the program. If that happens during the program, you get a positive, hurrah. The second kind of timing for a post-secondary credential is if your participant gets if they get that post-secondary credential within 1 year of exit, you also get a positive. So let's say this is a good reason why you want to keep in touch with people, right? Let's say you helped someone get a job, they've been doing great, and their employer says, you know what, it would be really great if you could get a certificate in IT support. And so they help the person go back to community college. And this is all after your program, right? Well, if you've been keeping in touch with your participants, you're going to know that person got that after they exited within 1 year, and you can count it as a positive. So again, this is the timing. You can get a post-secondary credential either during the program or within 1 year after exit. The next way is if you earn a GED or diploma during the program, you have to get something extra, right? Because it's not post-secondary. Person has to be in education leading to a post-secondary credential within 1 year after exit, and you'll get the positive. Or a fourth way, and this is pretty easy, I think, for all of you that really work so hard to get someone a GED during your program. If they're employed within 1 year after exit, you'll get a positive. So I think it's pretty easy to get a positive on this measure if people are actually in training and they complete, or again, they get the GED within 1 year, and then within 1 year after exit, they're employed. Let's do the timing of this measure. I'm sorry, I think I wasn't showing the slide there. So what if Nate entered training in January and finished training in June? He also exits from the program in June. But in order to get his credential, Nate has to take a licensing exam, which is only offered once per quarter. And so he takes the licensing exam in August and he passes. Does Nate get a positive for the credential rate, even though his credential was earned in the first quarter after exit? What do you think? Let's see your answers online. Confer with your neighbor there in person.
Let's get a show of hands for the yeses. Let's get a show of hands for the no's. The majority here are at yes.
That's correct. And all of you online are super smart too. Nate does get a positive because he got that credential within 1 year after exit. So I'm just going to show you the quarters. So he had until the next year. So you guys are doing terrific. So I'm doing a time check. We're at 15 minutes till. We are going to, I think instead of going through all the other indicators, or I maybe should take a read of the room, we can either do an activity where you practice all 4 indicators that we've just learned, which I think I prefer to do, unless the room is like, no, we understand all those, keep going. So I kind of prefer to stop and do an activity that again has you practice those 4, or we can very quickly go through the other 4 indicators, meaning we would just talk about the definitions. Can you assess the room, Chelsea, and online if you can give me kind of your preference?
If you'd like to go with the first option and doing the activity on the first 4 indicators, raise your hand.
Yes. Oh, I thought that was a yes. Oh, you're assessing.
That's option 1, activity on the indicators we've learned so far. Okay, option 2 is going to be continuing on with the workshop on the remaining indicators. Show of hands. Our audience here in person would like to continue on with the workshop on the remaining indicators.
Wonderful. I am fine with doing what the room wants to do, and I really appreciate that. So I'm going to go over the definition of the remaining performance indicators. And as I kind of said at the very beginning of this workshop, you know, an hour and a half is just not enough time to go through all of them, but we have a recorded version of this on the Community of Practice, and you can listen there. So the 5th performance indicator is called measurable skill gains. And I'm going to read the definition. It's the percent of participants who during the course of the program year are in education or training programs that lead to a recognized post-secondary credential or employment and who are achieving measurable skill gains. And that's defined as documented academic, technical, occupational, or other forms of progress towards such a credential or employment. The key things to understand here is this was designed to measure interim progress of participants, and there are a lot of ways that you can get a positive here. And the folks that are in this measure are those that were in education or training programs. So if someone was never in an education or training program, this doesn't apply. And that education or training program has to lead to either post-secondary credential or employment. And it includes people who are in high school or GED program. It includes people who are in on-the-job training, but it does not include people who are in work experience. That's not considered training. And each participant can count as a success only once during a program year. Program years run from July to June, even if the individual has more than one skill gain. That's okay. But if your participant is participating in more than one program year, so they came in April and the program year ends June 30th and they're still there in October, it kind of straddles 2 program years, then they can count in multiple program years. So this is a very, very detailed indicator, as you can see by how many slides I'm skipping. I could do probably 2 hours just on this measure. But I just want you to know it's not difficult to get. It's just about understanding what counts as a positive. So I'm going to go on to the 6th performance indicator. And this is called percent in training. And I'm going to have BC read this one. If BC is still in the room.
Here she comes.
I'm gonna do this and I'm not even wearing my glasses. The percentage of active participants in a report period placed in training.
Awesome. Thank you, BC.
Sure.
So this one is an easy one. Basically, if you put folks in training, then you get a positive. This is measured during the program. You know how so many of those indicators were like after exit? This one is during the program, just like that measurable skill gains measure that we just quickly went over. And the reason why this indicator is even in the Indian program, Indian and Native American program, is because DOL, Department of Labor, is urging you as grantees to put people into training unless they already have, let's say, if they already have the strengths and the skills. No, they do not have to go in training. Okay, so it's not that people have to go in training. It's just that they're urging folks to go in training because we know that the majority of jobs need some kind of post-secondary credential these days. And as we look to the future, we see that the types of jobs that are coming, 5 years down the line and 10 years down the line, all need post-secondary training. And so we really, we're encouraging folks to put people in training. This is a real-time measure. And training includes any of these: skill upgrading, entrepreneurial training, occupational skills training, and registered apprenticeships. Okay, we're on to number 7. I'm going to read this one. It's called the employability enhancement or training completion rate. And it's the percentage of exiters receiving at least one of the following 5 enhancements. So we measure it after exit. Well, I know it says exiters, but it's actually measured during the program. So if any of these have happened to your participant, you get a positive. Did they complete training? Did they return to school full time? Did they complete a major level of education, complete worksite training objective, or attain a basic or occupational skills goal? And so this one also is really easy to get a positive on. So again, you just have to know these are the kinds of things that I need to keep track of. This is in GPMS. It's kept track of, and you can look at your outcomes. You can make sure that someone is getting at least one of these to get positives. Again, why do we have these on here? This, just like all the other indicators, will help people as they seek employment. The last indicator is not an individual indicator, but it's looked at for your whole program. It's called retention with the same employer. And it's the percentage of program participants who exit and are employed with the same employer in the second quarter after exit and the fourth quarter after exit. So we do look at this for all grantees, okay? And you can look, you'll be able to see it on GPMS for you. But as I said earlier, if someone is with a different employer in the fourth quarter after exit, you still get a positive for that other measure, fourth quarter employment rate. So I would not worry too much about this, okay? And now we have 5 minutes left for questions because we made it through all 8 performance indicators. So I want to know what kinds of questions come to mind. I'm going to go back to, I think the names of all of the indicators, just to remind you. Oops. So we have employed in the second quarter after exit, employed in the fourth quarter after exit, median earnings in the second quarter after exit, credential attainment, measurable skill gains, percent in training, employability enhancement, retention with the same employer. Whew, that's a lot. What kinds of questions do you have? Okay, there, I've got a question from someone online. Tiana asks, is there a suggested amount of time that a client should be in GPMS if they are in post-secondary school? It's an excellent question. What I'm understanding for Tiana to say is, let's say someone is in a one-year program, right? And Tiana, I'm hearing you say, do I want to keep, how long do I want to keep them active, right? Well, if the person has not gotten a credential yet, and you know it's still going to be 6 more months till they get the credential, I would keep them active. If they're not working, you'd get a negative on employment, right? You'd get a negative on credential. And if you exit them, then all that beautiful work that you've been doing with your client just might not come to fruition, though it might, but it's kind of a little more of a guessing game. Tiana, are you concerned? You can unmute if you'd like. Are you concerned that you would be spending money?
Yeah, I mean, I know you mentioned that some people can straddle the program years. So we do, I guess I'm more concerned with the people who are in like getting a 4-year degree. I'm not sure that we can necessarily keep them in for 4 years, but I don't, you know, sometimes we just have a lot of people these days who take 4-year programs. So I guess I just wanted your thoughts on what do we do, or what is the suggested time? You know, maybe keep them in for a year, but we may not get some measurements.
Yeah, I think, Tiana, your example of a 4-year degree is very different, right? And I really appreciate you bringing that up, because so many of the post-secondary credentials we're getting, folks, are 6 months maybe, or a year. But some programs, and this is, Tiana, you're actually probably an unusual grantee that is putting someone into a 4-year program. But for those of you that are, congratulations. I think that's wonderful, but I would not keep them an active participant for 4 years, because it will just seem like you're not exiting people, right? Especially if it's a large number of folks. And so, Tiana, if you also want to talk about that, you can give me an email. You can send me an email and we can talk about it more, but that's my kind of quick answer, right? Because let's say you had 20 people, it would look like you're not exiting 20 people who are getting their bachelor's degree. Any other questions in the last minute before you go on?
Laura, can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Sure, who's this?
This is Chelsea.
Hi, Chelsea.
Hi. What if they are receiving a supportive service like tuition assistance? For
Yeah.
that program? Do you still recommend them not staying in the program for the entire 4 years?
No, if the program is paying for their, they're paying their tuition, they need to stay active. That's a great question. Because otherwise you can't pay for their program. That's a great question. Okay, I see we're at 1 o'clock here in San Francisco and we're at 3 o'clock in Oklahoma. I really thank you for participating online and in person and being so active and thinking about this so deeply. I am always available for questions, but I really urge people to go and listen to the performance indicators training that is on the Community of Practice. Thank you so much for your time and have a great rest of the conference. So much appreciate it.